Hey, it's Gil from
The Mind Buzz Podcast.
today's Mind Culture and Social Podcast. And you're listening to Pods Like Us.
Hello and welcome to Pods Like Us. I'm Martin, well known to my friends as Marv, and this time I am joined by Greg and Russ from the show DIY for Business. Hey guys, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having us on.
How's it going, Marv?
Fine, thank you, Greg. How are you both doing?
Doing well.
Yeah, we're really excited to be on your show.
I'm really excited to chat with you, especially one of the bits that I've got down as a suggestion. So, what's the? Because both of you have mentioned in your shows that you have both got history with being in business. So, what is your actual history with business, Ross? Do you own a company yourself and have that sort of history?
I have owned a company, so I started a company as a little kind of side gig, just I worked in radio, and radio doesn't pay the best, at least back in the 90s, it didn't. And so I, needed some side money, some just side hustle money coming in. So I started a business where basically I was DJing. I was going out and doing mobile DJ. And I really enjoyed marketing that and building that business. And I enjoyed the sales side of it. I enjoyed it, all of the aspects of running a business, not just the DJ side of it. So, I was like, well, maybe I could do this full time. So I started pushing more and more and more. And through the years, the company grew. I incorporated it in 96, and then I sold it in 2009. So I ran it for quite some time before I sold it, and fortunately sold it for profit and all that fun stuff. That was good. And the company's still around, which is great. And, I learned a lot from running it. It wasn't just me. I had several other DJs. I expanded out to doing like casinos and lighting and event planning and all of these different aspects of an event. We ended up doing, we did about, in some years it was 300, some years it was 500. I mean, there were some really great years as the number of events. And that was weddings. And, we had contracts with like the Ritz-Carlton hotels and Clorox Corporation, Major League Baseball, all these different things. So it grew really well, and I enjoyed running it. And then I had kids. I was like, well, can I be a great dad and be there for all the soccer games on the weekend and still run this company? I don't think so. So I opted to sell the company, and I started working with Greg, and we worked together for 13 years, essentially advising local companies. And then we decided to start this podcast.
Wow, that's incredible. That is so. I mean, so you went from there to there. So eventually, you must have had a staff that included like HR and things like that, where they'd interview people and take them on as staff, and then you sort of like built up, sort of like that department, and then other departments.
running your own business, you got to do everything. You got to do everything. You got to know everything. And that's sort of the inspiration for the show. Yeah, we call it DIY for business, do it yourself, because you sometimes need to do it yourself. And sometimes that's a mistake. Sometimes, yeah, you got to bring in an HR person, or you got to bring in somebody to do your accounting or whatever it is, to tackle those things so that you can focus on the things that you're good at. So that's a lot of what we talk about on the show, mainly because that's a lot of what we've experienced in the past.
So did you start by doing all of those jobs yourself, and then eventually, as it got more successful, find people to do those, or did you carry on and do all those jobs yourself?
Some of the things I did myself. Like I hired every single person for the company. I didn't have like an HR person. I had every person that I had working with me, I had a relationship with, just because I wanted them to really understand who we are and, why we did what we did as a company, and you really get that company message out there. And I really wanted to have a relationship with each one of the people that were going to go represent my company. I was really like, that was one thing that I just really wanted to do. So I trained every single person. I hired every person. I found every person. And sometimes it was just like, one guy I hired, I was at a bar, and it was like, it was Cinco de Mayo. And I was having a margarita. Many of my stories involve having margaritas. But anyway,
And
this
Cinco de Mayo, by the way.
and
Russ.
Cinco de Mayo. Exactly. Yeah. I've got a couple of Cinco de Mayo stories.
You do.
Brilliant.
But yeah, I was at this bar and, and like hanging out, and, there was a bartender who just delivered amazing service. He was so good. Like so we just got one drink, my wife and I are lightweight. So we, had two margarita, like each had a margarita. We ordered some nachos. We ordered some other food, whatever it was. He was so friendly, so talkative, so nice. It's like, I got to hire this guy. This guy is awesome. And so I ended up did exactly that. And I brought him on board, and he now runs his own entertainment company and does his own thing too. So it's like he went from, bartending to making entertainment and hosting events his life, just because of that one little, nice little bit of customer service. Because I was so focused on customer service. I found it was harder to find somebody that could deliver great customer service than it was to find somebody that could, be a good host of a party or play music.
So what about your own history then, Greg?
Well, I had entrepreneurship in my blood, and I didn't even know it. When I was very young, some of my first memories as a child was being at my grandparents' restaurant. They owned a restaurant, and I was probably, this is before I started school, so I probably was 3-4 years old. And I remember just hanging out at the restaurant and helping my grandparents, whether it was washing dishes or greeting the people at the door and helping them to their seat. They've sold the company since then, so they're not going to get in trouble for, child labor laws. I remember doing this at a very young age. I even remember, this is back in the day where all the receipts were on paper and stuff like that. And I was sitting with my grandmother on the living room floor of her house, sorting receipts to do her taxes every year. And this was, at a super young age. And I never realized that was going to have an influence on me wanting to run my own business someday. So, I kind of went through the traditional, schooling where I went to college and came out of college, got a job. And I was in the high tech industry. And, I think it was about 4 or 5 years into my career, and I was doing really well in high tech. I realized that, I don't know if I want to do this my whole life, work for, a very successful company. So I started kind of like Russ. I started a kind of a side job where I was doing lead generation consulting for high tech business because I was, I knew the industry really well. I had a lot of contacts. So I started a consulting business, and that was my first, company that I actually ran myself. And I did that for, a few years, and it was great side money as I had a full-time job. But then I realized, that full-time job just wasn't fulfilling enough. I was working for somebody, they were, a great company, but I wanted to do it on my own. So I landed up starting my own golf business. Me and a friend, we started manufacturing and building custom built golf clubs. And we started with one store. It did really well. We started to expand, and we had 7 stores at our height, custom building golf clubs. And that was a lot of fun. But we realized that we were going up against some of the top manufacturers in the world, right? The Callaways, the Pings, the Titleists, and it was super challenging. How are we going to market ourselves to really, make a dent in this, golfing community, which was extremely competitive on the marketing side? So we decided, hey, you know what? Let's start a golf radio show. And this was my first introduction into radio. Both Russ and I have, backgrounds in radio. So we started our own golf radio show. And the thought there was, well, if we had extra advertising space, why don't we advertise our own stores? And that's exactly what we did. And lo and behold, the radio show became even more popular than our stores. And it was a lot easier to run because you just had to do a show. We did a 2-hour show once a week. We got syndicated on, Clear Channel, and then we got picked up by Armed Forces Radio. So at our height, we were heard by over 2 million people each week on our golf radio show.
Wow.
And we were selling the advertising time for it. And so it got to a point where we sold out all of our inventory, and there really wasn't much for me to do except for maintain our accounts and do that one show each week for 2 hours. So I decided to go out and work for a company just on the side. And that got me introduced to kind of where Russ and I eventually met. I took a company nationwide as far as expansion goes, and it got sold. So then the founder of that company and myself decided that we're going to start our own. And that is the company that we eventually hired Russ on to do all of our marketing for us. And, that company is 20 years strong. And we've been able to grow that. And it's been exciting because we work with so many different businesses and consulting with them to help them grow. And each business is a little different. They're looking for different things. So we've taken that knowledge and brought it into our DIY for Business podcast, because we have had so much experience in working with different types of businesses for reaching their different goals. And we're just trying to share that knowledge now on our podcast.
Well, the great thing is that you've both picked, or you both did pick areas that where there was a need, shall we say? I mean, the entertainment business, there's always a need for people to work in events and to provide all that sort of service, and the same with the golf clubs. I mean, I won't be surprised if you did incredible business for that, because it's a multi-million-pound industry in a way, the golfing, because there are so many, so shall we say, millionaire golfers. Well, lots of people are golfers, whether they're millionaires or not, but the richer people, if you can provide a tailor-made club for them, then that is an incredible niche to get into.
Yeah, and the timing was really good for that. We started right at the height, I would say, right at where Tiger Woods started to become really popular. And I mean, if you remember back in those days, everybody was getting into golf. It got more diversified, different races, genders. Everybody got really pumped up about golf. So talking golf on the radio, we never had a shortage of stories and content and people that we brought on for interviews, because everybody was super excited about golfing at the time. And it's gone through its ups and downs, and we're seeing a resurgence in golf, with the pandemic in the recent year and a half, 2 years, that more and more people are getting into golf because that was something that they could do and it was safe. So we're seeing a resurgence in golf again.
Absolutely.
What's up, everybody? This is Chris from the podcast Real Film Reviewed, and you're listening to Marv on Pods Like Us.
Absolutely. So, first of all, then, how were you introduced to podcast in the first place, Russ?
Well, so actually, Greg and I, we started doing a sales podcast just for internal sales team. We figured out that was a way, because they're always in their car, a way to train them every single day. And it was just so much fun working with Greg that I was like, wow, I really, really need to do more of this. So I kind of went all in on podcasting. Right before the pandemic, I had this idea, and just because I still might do this one idea, I won't throw it out there on the air. But I had this idea for a podcast that basically became impossible because of the pandemic. So I'm like, okay, well, I guess I won't do that. So I reshifted and I started a daily podcast called This Is Today. And I basically chat for 10 minutes each day about either the historical events of the day, or whatever random national day it is that day, or world celebration, type of thing, whether it's, National Cinnamon Roll Day or something, right? I talk about those goofy things and make fun of it a bit. And, and that podcast started to grow, and it got me, more importantly, experience every single day at doing podcasting. And then I started another podcast called Learning More, where it's like an interview podcast where basically I'm doing kind of, what you're doing here. There's something that I find of interest and I want to learn more about it. So I bring them on my podcast called Learning More. And then I was like, well, this whole thing, I got to get Greg on this, because I had so much fun working with him. And it's so enjoyable to have somebody where, you could just bounce something off of them. They just go with it. They, he laughs at my jokes. That's always good. And, we're always going the same direction on the podcast. So it just worked out so well together in our sales podcast that I was like, we got to do this. So I just, basically kind of said, hey, this is our new thing. Let's start doing this. Let's get you a microphone. Let's get this, let's get that. And, we I don't know, we're through our first season. We're setting up for our second season, and it's still just as much fun now as it was then. Sometimes even it's getting more fun as we do it more.
I would say it is getting more fun, Russ. I enjoy it. Now that we're more experienced at it, we're getting better guests. It is more fun for me, at least, than when at first it was just like dipping my toes in the pool, right? It was like, oh, it's a little bit chilly. I got to get used to this. And once we started getting our rhythm, I think the show has, really evolved over this first season. I can't wait to what we're going to do in season 2. We're already in planning for it. It's pretty exciting.
Well, you've already got some. You've already shown variation in the guests that you have. I mean, this most recent episode that I've listened to with the author, that was an incredible interview.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I got to tell you, Russ mentioned that, he has 2 other podcasts that he does by himself. Marv, you have your podcast that you do by yourself. I have the ultimate respect for both of you and all the podcasters out there that do a solo show. I mean, I have the luxury of having Russ as a partner and co-hosting with me. So, it just flows by so quickly. Our shows just happen. Usually they run between 30 and 40 minutes. And we kind of joke because it's like the fastest 30, 40 minutes we have throughout the entire day, because it's just so much fun and it just flows fast. Mm-hmm. So I think it's just amazing for all the podcasts out there, podcast hosts out there. They can just do it by themselves. And sometimes they don't even have guests. They're just, giving content and providing great information for the entire show by themselves. It's I give them all respect.
I think it shows the incredible diversity that there is in the podcasting world, though, as opposed to what there is in the world of commercial radio. Mm-hmm. Because I think that commercial radio, you've got a problem where, well, I'd say it's a problem, but it's sort of an understandable problem where the corporation behind it, they'll be looking at numbers and they'll be thinking, well, what would make the numbers? Whereas the best thing about podcasting is that it gets those it gets the audiences that aren't catered for, shall we say, by the commercial radio stations.
Yeah, and I've been listening to your show, Marv, and what I marvel at about your show is you have, a different genre of podcast on, each time. And yet you're so familiar with that topic where you can interview that person and have great conversations, no matter what the topic is, whether it's the Beatles or classic movies or robots or now business. You're able to carry that conversation, and that's not easy to do.
I'd like to think that I've got a mind that's open to new things and to learning new things, and a mind that's sort of interested, really, I suppose.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I guess that's a little bit why Russ and I work so well together, is because, we're only talking about business, but there's so many different sides to business. There's no end, right? So there's always something to learn.
I think it's a good thing to be open and to learn, be willing to learn new things as well, because I think I'd like to think that it makes you a better person to understand other people's points of view and where they're coming from as well, and what makes them tick, shall we say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think, with the way that the world is, and I'm not talking like politically here, I'm just saying like technology wise, you always have to be learning now. Because whatever you learned many times, if you learn it today, it's going to be outdated in a month or a week, or even the minute you close the book that you're reading. It's interesting how fast life is moving now, and specifically with technology, it changes so much. You've always got to be learning.
Yeah, that was an interesting one that I got from, you've just reminded me with the recent episode where, was it yourself, Greg, where you were talking about the industry of technology, where you picked up on the comment from one of the author's books, which was something about not being better, but to create something that was completely new. Don't look for better.
Lay an egg and make chicken soup. Was that
yes,
the one?
Yeah. That was a fascinating interview with Aria Brish, and he was an author of that book, and basically the gist of it is, if your company is not innovating on a constant basis, your competition is going to pass you. And I mentioned earlier here that I used to be in the tech industry, and there's no industry that is evolving faster than technology right now. Like in the tech world, if you're not innovating, you're not coming up with better products or new products that offer a solution to problems that haven't been solved yet, you're going to get passed by your competition. And what was also fascinating about that interview was not just innovating product, but innovating processes within your own organization as well. Because, there are better ways to do a process, to do a function within the business. And if you're not looking at how to optimize, and Russ can talk a little bit about automation, because we have this one episode called Automation Sensation, which Russ was just drooling over. But if you're not innovating your processes, then that's going to be a detriment to your company as well too. So there's a lot of ways to innovate to keep moving forward, and I thought that was a real interesting interview with Aria.
I thought Russ was going to carry on from there and say something.
Oh yeah, no, I was just going to say yes. I love the automation.
Yeah, that's it. The automation.
Yeah, it's nice to like in talking about that book and about here's the thing with the show. Well, we like to have a little bit of fun too. And with Aria, we got to have a little fun. We talked about chickens, because I've got chickens in the backyard, which we discovered in that episode. 4
chickens in the backyard.
Exactly. And, it's like these things that, that's kind of an odd thing to talk about on the podcast. Right. But we're always talking about things and sharing our experience with, and we like with the audience, and we like to bring on, like, learn from Aria and learn from his, mistakes, learn from his, wins, learn from his losses. And I felt like that's a lot of what his book was too, by looking at various bits of innovation throughout the years, whether it be, whatever it was. I think he went all the way back to Tesla or something, like Nikolai Tesla, not the current Tesla. So like, just it's fascinating to be able to talk to somebody like that has put together that much research just on innovation. So it's a thrill to be able to have those types of interviews.
Well, I know I'm going to be thrilled to find out how you'll, when you tell me about the cows that you own and the pigs as well in the back garden.
Yeah, I gotta work on that. I gotta expand the farm a bit. I think I need a bigger house.
Yeah.
At some point during this interview, Marv, you're going to hear my dog barking, and my dogs are kind of the mascots for our show because they love to contribute to any podcast we do. You'll hear them in the background.
I have heard your dogs in the background. I should have mentioned them when I've done my blogs and posted up about the show. Actually.
Hey, this is Jack from Bad Counsel. You want some good counsel? Keep listening to my man Marv and Pods Like Us.
So, before we we'll carry on with that and come back to another point a bit later. So, how do you research the shows and how do you get hold of the guests that you have on your shows?
Well, we're actually, it's interesting that you asked that, because right now we are in the midst of planning season 2. Now with season 1, initially when you first start a podcast, we started it last November, where we did like little test shows and messing around and just trying to get everything, set up. And then we actually launched in April. So we had a lot of a time there in the beginning to just kind of get everything right, before we launched the show. And, with that season, it was kind of let's just come up with something. Let's just, let's figure it out. We got to get a show on by Thursday. What are we going to do? And it was probably a little more chaotic than it's going to be in season 2. So, because we were just learning like how and what topics and what we should talk about and how the show is really going to run. So for season 2, what we're doing is we actually put together a little, we're using Airtable. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that, but it's this interface where you can basically put in a bunch of data like you can in Excel, and you're moving stuff around. So what we're doing for season 2 is we're coming up with ideas. All of the various ideas that we've had, like when we're talking to Aria, actually, I wrote down like 3 or 4 different show ideas for future episodes that I would love to dig in more and talk about. So the current guests really, and those conversations really like help me and Greg to come up with new ideas for additional shows. So then we put them on there, and then we just start looking around for guests. We're using every possible source out there to try to find, quality guests to talk about various topics that we've decided that should be on the show. And then we also, in every show, we ask our audience to contribute as well. So if they know somebody, or if they've got a business problem that they're trying to solve, they can let us know, and we'll build an entire show around it. So we're trying to, have that interactive part of this as well, because, the people listening, that's who the show is for. So if they want to, contribute and come up with an episode that we should talk about, some sort of topic that they need to learn more about, like, let's do it. Let's put that on there. So that's basically been the process so far.
And the other nice thing about once we have a topic, we usually go online and research that topic and find out, who is respected in that area of business.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Through either social media or just plain research, we find out who are the experts when it comes to that topic. Who should we be talking to? Who's written books about it? Who has podcasts about that topic? So once we do our research on that, then we reach out and we figure out, this is the right person that our audience would find interesting and, valuable, information about whatever topic is, whether it's marketing or accounting or legal advice. We're always looking for somebody that's very reputable and people can really respect their opinions.
Yeah, because another person that you had on that was really fascinating would be, was it Sue Willite, who was the
Yeah.
fantastically titled Success Attraction Expert.
Yes.
Now that's a title,
She does have the greatest title ever. It's not an awesome title.
isn't it? Isn't it just?
I always thought that, if I ever get just to make up a title for myself, I want to be, I want to, if I can't use Sue's because she's already using it. So I thought mine is going to be Greg Louie, Friend Maker.
Ah,
What do you think of that?
I like that one. What's your job title then, Russ?
Guy that sits next to Greg.
Ah,
And I'm the guy that talks to Russ and Greg.
Yeah, Sue was awesome. Sue was a lot of fun. And what the unfortunate thing about the podcast is that the listeners don't get to hear the pre-talk and the post-talk, because we have so much fun in that as well. Like, we end up, some of these guests we end up talking to for a good hour after the podcast, just chit-chatting about stuff. And I think Sue, by the end of it, was like, we got to go get lunch or we got to go play golf, we got to go do something, we got to hang out. So I'm sure at some point here we're going to be hanging out with Sue, because it was just so much fun talking to her.
and that was the first time we ever spoken to Sue.
Right.
We hadn't had any relationship with Sue prior to the show, but in that 30 to 45 minutes that we interviewed her, we developed such a connection and a relationship with her that, like Russ said, we end up spending more time with her after the show than we actually recorded for the show. And we are going to plan on getting together somehow in the future here, and just have some fun and have some lunch or golf or whatever.
That's the interesting. Sorry, carry on, Greg.
No, I mean that happened with Sue, but this has happened a number of times with our guests where, we interview them for the first time and then a relationship develops just from that first interview. And whether it's an online relationship where we're, contacting each other and texting each other, or, through social media, talking with each other, or in Sue's case, it just so happened that she's within driving distance of both Russ and I, that we're actually going to physically get together and have some lunch.
Wow. But yes, I've found that as well with when I've chatted to people who, in this show, and there's just like, I've not spoken with them ever beforehand, and then suddenly I've built up, like, I'd say almost a friendship with a lot of these people. It's just the strangest thing.
It's interesting how the podcast world is working like that. It's one of those things where they all support each other. And that's what's really cool about the podcasters that, we've spoken to and interviewed on our show or just, through social media. Everybody wants this industry to grow. And we're at a point where there's tremendous growth on the near horizon for podcasters. And I think everybody's in it for the right reasons and, want to support each other.
Yeah, and to go to another point, about what you were saying, where the pre-show and the post-show chat, recently when I was talking to Matthew DeSantis, who I was talking to him about his horse racing podcast, but he also does a podcast on politics as well. And so in the pre-show chat, we were just generally chatting, and I caught onto something about him where I sort of knew that he had an interest in film, but as we were talking, I thought, this guy hasn't just got an interest in film, he loves films. So that meant that then when it came to soon after that, I arranged one of the group shows, and it was going to be about, we were going to talk about what makes a classic film. I thought, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to invite Matthew to be a guest because I know how much he loves films. So it's those things that you find out where if you didn't have the post or pre-show chat, you wouldn't pick these things up and get that rapport where you know these things about these people. And he absolutely loved being a part of that chat because it put him into a situation which, for most of us as well, it's just a natural conversation that you would have with people. It's not what your job is per se or what your show is about, but it's something that you absolutely love that you can talk about. And he just found that interest. He loved doing that, and I liked the fact that I was able to give him that moment of chatting about one of his favorite things.
Yeah, somehow through the interviews and through the pre-show, post-show, we find these common interests, and we start bonding around those common interests. And in Russ's case, and for our show, we find these common interests after the show, and we end up bringing them back, kind of like what you did, Marv, about a different topic. Yeah. So yeah, in his case, it was about he was a guest for the classic movie show, which. But here's what's interesting about the first show you did with him, the horse racing show. I listened to that show. I really, really enjoyed him, and I kind of have a fondness for horse races as well too. I ended up starting to follow his show on Twitter because of hearing him on your show. So now we're following each other, and I hope to develop a relationship with him at some point too. I'd love to interview him about the whole world and business of horse racing.
Absolutely, and he is his other show for politics. He used to actually he's a professor of politics. I think he used to be in charge of a school and all sorts of things. He's a school, like a college administrator and all sorts. It's very fascinating history with Matthew.
Yeah, the whole podcast community, so there's the relationship that we have with our guests. I feel like the podcast community. As soon as I started doing podcasts, I was jumping on Reddit and just chatting with other hosts and trying to get a feel for certain things. Or I had questions about something where should I host my podcast? Or, how do I get onto this particular podcast app or whatever? Man, the podcast community is so strong with people out there just sharing information, helping each other out. It's so awesome. One of the first guests that I had on my This Is Today show was a fellow podcaster. It was Gabby and Boofer from it's a podcast where basically it's called I Can't Win for Losing, and it's basically about a gambling podcast. And it was so much fun. And I still text back and forth with the host of that show. Just because we had so much fun talking, and we ended up, it was the same sort of thing where we ended up talking for a couple of hours. Or there's this podcast called Listen to This, where these two guys, they're basically listening to new artists, emerging artists, and they bring those emerging artists on the show and interview them. And those guys, we're always chatting on Twitter and talking to each other. I mean, it's so much fun to be a part of this community. It's almost like we're all working together. It's like we're all not competing against each other, like over in commercial radio land where, the other radio station, let's avoid them. Let's not talk to them, or let's, TP their radio station van or whatever it was. Yes, that does happen. And with podcasting though, it's like, we all support each other so much, and it feels like such a great community. I just love being a part of it.
So how do you record your show then and edit it, putting it together?
So actually we started out like you are here with Zoom, and I just had so many issues with Zoom. So I'm a huge audio geek, and I wouldn't say our show is perfect with the audio, with the sound of things. But I really wanted different tracks. I really wanted different things. I looked for a while to try to figure out something better than Zoom. And for a while it was just Zoom as the way to record. But then I discovered Zencaster, and oh man, Marv, you got to try Zencaster. This thing is amazing. It's so cool. So you get different tracks for each person.
Yep.
And while the video quality, it brings down the video quality if your bandwidth is not that great, so that, you're fine, but it records locally. So at the end of the episode, you get HD quality video, and you get this high quality audio directly into your Google Drive that I throw into Adobe Audition. Yep. And I'm able to edit everything on separate tracks and put it all together. that Zencaster thing has made my life so much easier as far as editing goes. And now I'm showing Greg how to edit in Audition. He's done it in the past, some audio editing, but I'm gonna get him up to speed on the new software here. Actually, just in a couple of days. So that's gonna make my life even easier.
That's great.
It's not quite automation. It's just called Gregamation.
Yeah, exactly. Gregamation. Oh man, I'm gonna write that one down.
You need to trademark that one.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is Dave of Live Life Loud, the Decibelic podcast, and you're listening to Pods Like Us with Marv.
That's great what you said, because with Zoom, I do get separate feeds, but they aren't local. They are all, I think they're all from my end, and what my end picks up, I think, which isn't so good. And yeah, I've even messaged Zoom and got no response from them as well to say, why can't you sort out that sort of thing? Yeah,
we were having so many glitches where, on the show, we have a guest that's saying something amazing. And then all of a sudden, it's like, well, the secret to business success is, and as long as you're doing that, then you're fine. It's like, wait, and we wouldn't know until the end of the show that part was clipped out. So I had to go through and edit these parts out. And I felt like there was just so much gold in there that was lost because now I feel like I'm slamming Zoom and they're going to hate on our show and not ever want to sponsor us, but Zoom is great for business meetings. But for the recording side of things, I'm telling you, Zencaster is awesome.
And in the beginning, when it was just Russ and I, Zoom, it was working. And if there were any problem, Russ and I would just get back on and we'd
re-record. Yeah.
But, once we started having guests fairly frequently on our show, and there was, 3 tracks or 4 tracks, getting the guest to come back, that's not something we wanted to do. So It was nice to find Zencaster and be able to, be really clean and have that good audio from the beginning.
Yeah, and their customer support too is amazing. And no, by the way, they're not paying us. I sound like I'm doing a commercial here for Zencaster, but their support is incredible. I mean, I've chatted back and forth. They have this little live chat. It's a live chat, and it's a little delayed. Like you get an answer in a couple hours, but it's amazing that you can actually get an answer in a couple of hours. With a lot of providers, you don't get an answer right away. As you can tell, I mean, I've said this a couple of times. I'm really concerned about customer service and, giving great service. And it's been fantastic with Zencaster so far.
Zencaster is not an advertiser, but Zencaster, if you're listening and you want to be an advertiser, please reach out.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
Yeah. And if you want to provide Russ and Greg with free Zencaster, then that's fine. Yeah.
Yes. There you go. There you go. That works out well.
I'll take the same as well. Thanks. It'd save on the annual cost it's costing me, because I've got an annual thing for Zoom. So I've just paid it. So I'm stuck with it for the rest of the 12 months.
Gotcha.
So I don't know whether you noticed on the notes, I don't know whether you picked up on it, the 5 steps to success that I'd written down as a bullet point. And so my idea was to ask each of you if you had what you thought were 5 steps to success in business.
Russ, I'll let you start.
You heard my little, I was sorry for the lip smacking people, but well, I would say the first thing is I'm going to go with planning. Without a plan going into anything is a bad idea. Now I'm saying hey, you can test stuff, you can figure out stuff like the podcast story that I said earlier, right? Like I had one podcast route that I was going to go on, and then all of a sudden I had to switch it and change it. So having a plan though, and then being willing to change the plan, adapt the plan, move around, make these tweaks as you go and you learn. That's fantastic. But I think planning, I would say, is probably would be my number one piece.
Yeah, I would agree with that one. And the next one I would say is be true to yourself.
Mm.
Don't try to be somebody or something you're not because you think that's what a business owner should be. I think, if you're running a company, you really need to be honest with yourself, be honest with your customers of who you are, with your staff and your employees of what your strengths, what your weaknesses are. Because if you're trying to be somebody you're not and not be authentic, I think people see through that too quickly. And I don't think there's longevity in a business when it starts with that. I think you got to just be yourself. You have a great idea. You have a service that you want to bring to the marketplace, and do it in a better way than your competition. Then we encourage that. That's who the majority of our listeners are, is entrepreneurs and startups that really want to get going in their business. And my first thing is just be yourself. Be yourself, and if people will enjoy that, it'll be refreshing, because I think there's so much of the businesses that try to be something else, and I don't think that works.
I think the two that you've mentioned, both of you so far, would also go for podcasting as well as two things that you need to do, to make sure that you've planned what you're doing in the first place, and then, like you said, to be true to yourself. And I think that helps in, all walks of life, really.
I agree, and this one is with podcasting, but in all walks of life, and especially in businesses. Connect to your audience. Know who your audience is, and connect with them. And that's easy to say, and sometimes not easy to do. But if you can, one of the things that we do on our show is we're very vulnerable in a sense, where we open up about our lives. We open up our families, successes, and failures that we've had in business. And I think because we do that, people realize that we're not putting up fronts. We the stuff that they're going through in their lives with their business or with their families, they're not alone. And that's actually kind of the way we close our show is, we say, you're not alone, because that's the worst feeling people could have, is to feel, isolated. And sometimes business owners do feel isolated, or podcasters feel isolated. And, that's what we're trying to help people through.
Okay, another step towards success then. So number 3, will it be next?
All right, I'll do it. I would say believe in yourself. Yeah. It's so easy to get down on yourself, especially when, whether you're starting a podcast or starting a business. I mean, it's like, oh, do I know what I'm doing? Like, am I going to be able to do this? Am I going to be able to handle it? No, believe in yourself, because you're willing to take that risk and get out there and do it. I go back to high school. Okay. So in high school, I did not want to do theater, but my English teacher in high school said, you would be amazing at theater. You've got a stage presence. I can just tell it. The way the writings that you do are great. Like, they're funny, and I would love to get you on stage. Well, no, I don't want to do that. And I didn't want to do it because I didn't believe in myself. I didn't believe that I could actually do it. She walked me down when they were doing signups for electives, and introduced me to the teacher, the drama teacher. Said, this is Russ. He's the one I've been telling you about. He's going to sign up for this. He's got to do it. Tell him why he's got to do it. And we went through this whole thing, and I'm so glad. What that taught me was that, what, I've got to take risks, and I've got to believe that I can do it. And I think that if a business owner is out there and they're taking these risks, well, just, what, you're the one doing the risk. There are plenty of other people behind you that are not taking that risk. So you should believe in yourself that you can do it.
All right, I'll go next. And I think good communication is really key. Russ and I, part of what we do for our clients is we survey their customers, to find out what they wish that business did something better for them. And I would say around 80% of the time, the customer is not upset about the service that was produced or the product. It was about poor communication. Like an expectation was incorrectly set, or there was poor communication internally within the company where the salesperson didn't talk to the service manager, and the schedules got messed up, or there were delays that were never relayed. I think for businesses, if they can really focus on communicating well, both internally and with their clients or customers, it avoids the majority of the problems that the customers experience in the transactions. And a lot of times businesses don't focus on that. They're so money driven, where they're looking just at the bottom line, make the sale, that they miss what the follow up to the sale and what happens next. So I think it's extremely important to focus on good communication, both internally and externally.
Yeah. Yep. And that also goes with making podcasts as well. Make sure that you communicate and you understand what people are talking about and respond to that if need be.
Yeah, I think what you're identifying, Marv, is that, podcast is a business, right? So all the things that we're kind of saying that are, make you a success in business, follows true for podcasting as well too. It's a business. It's a fun business and we enjoy it, but it's still a business.
Essentially, all these things that you are mentioning are life skills, or skills that would make your whole life work better.
Oh yeah. We interviewed a psychologist, and Dr. Layla Ansari, and what was interesting about it, she has a private practice, and she works with a lot of business owners and non-business owners, but a lot of what she worked on with people worked both for business as well as their personal lives. It was amazing how interrelated the issues that come up and the solutions to them. So absolutely.
Absolutely. What are we on now? We're on to number 5, is it now?
Wow. Now it's tough to narrow it down. It's almost like we should vote on what the last ones here are, because
I should have got you to pick 5.
I've got like 5 or 6 here. Could our 5th option here be to ask for 5 more wishes?
Your wish is my command.
No. Greg, the one that I was thinking of, and I almost feel like this is number 5 worthy here of the top 5, is to be selective with your customers. Do you think is that top 5 worthy, or is that not top 5 worthy?
Well, why don't you go with that, and I'll give a 5B. How's that? Okay.
So we had a show where we talked about this, and I think, did we talk about this with Sue as well?
Yeah, I think we did.
Yeah. And it's like, your customers are picking your service, but you, in a way, are also picking your customers, whether it's how you set your price or how you do your marketing, or just your communications with that particular person. And you want to pick the right people that are going to work well and be compatible with your services. Somebody that isn't, like, let's say, not the greatest customer, like you have a meeting with them and they show up, 45 minutes late, leaving you sitting there, or, whatever it is, these little signals that happen like right up front, or they're not returning your calls, or they're not it's like, well, they're kind of a bad customer. Like, why would you want to work with them when you can work with somebody else, or somebody that's always asking for, a discount on your services, or, whatever it is. I think that was something. And the reason why I feel like that one is top 5 worthy is just because that was something that it took me a while to learn in business. I didn't know that at first. I took everything on, and it ended up where there were times where that was A, very overwhelming, and B, really frustrating, where I'm working with customers that are just not being friendly, not being considerate, not, like it just, I'm giving them all of this and they're giving me none of that in return. So that's why I think that one might be top 5 worthy. But what are you saying, Greg? What's your 5B?
My 5B is leadership. I think, as a business owner, there needs to be strong leadership. Now, leadership is subjective to, like I said earlier, be yourself. I don't necessarily mean you got to be this rah leader all the time, or be General MacArthur or something like that type of leader. Everybody has their own way of leadership, but you need to be a strong leader in your own way. We've had 2 different shows, which was really interesting on leadership. One was with a podcast host in France on leadership, and his whole show is just about leadership. And then we had a second show with an ex-Navy officer who was an officer on a nuclear submarine, and he learned a lot of leadership skills while leading on a submarine, where he says, if emergencies happen, you're trapped inside this big can basically, and you really need to be able to lead men and women in a proper way. So anyway, we had these different backgrounds discussing leadership, but basically they were both saying very similar things, that you need to lead in your own way, but your staff and your team and your clients look to you for a direction and a purpose. And if you don't provide that for them, it lends itself to a very disorganized and maybe a chaotic company. So I think leadership is a skill that you're not necessarily always going to be born with that, but you need to learn it if you aren't born with it, because to be a successful business owner, you need it.
That's okay. That one's pretty good, Greg. That's 5 worthy.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm Agent Scott.
And I'm Cam the Provocateur.
And we're from the Spy Hards podcast.
That's right. And you are listening to Pods Like Us, the podcast that also has the Midas touch.
All right. But I've got a 5C.
Ooh, here we go.
All right. Let's keep going. On this.
Well, and this one is another one that it took me a while to learn. And it actually, man, it keeps hitting you throughout your career. Remember to take breaks, like watch out for yourself. Watch out for yourself, because guess what? If you're every single day running the marathon, you're going to wear yourself out. And either your business is not going to be fun anymore, or you're not going to be creative, or you're going to be angry with your customers and take it out on them, or even, I might say even worse, you're going to come home and take it out on your family. Avoid that frustration and avoid all of that by remembering to take breaks, because it will help you be more creative, and it will help you be even like a better leader for your company.
Yeah, we definitely encourage balance and work lifestyle. And you can't just work all the time. And Russ and I have both fallen into that trap over the years when we've run our own businesses. Like, we're working a lot of hours here, and we both have families. We both have 2 children, wives, and we always encourage our listeners to find time for family. You can't just be 24/7 business. Because eventually there's going to be burnout, and it's going to harm your relationships. So we're all about having the right level of balance in your life.
Yeah, that reminds me a bit of what going back to Sue. When you were talking with Sue, she said something about the difference between it's she's saying it is good to be able to make, financially, to be able to make like a 6-figure, take 6-figure pay, but it's not good to have a 6-figure pay with an ulcer at the same time.
Right.
Or something like that.
Yeah. And, basically she was saying, kind of fighting that fight of work-life balance. But, one interesting thing that she also said in that show was that if that's what you want, she would say, okay, you can't have that 6-figure income and perhaps spend all this time, with your kids. Some people may not want that. They may not want to have where they're always, going to soccer games on the weekend or whatever, because every single person is different and they want different things. So the big thing there is to identify what it is you want and understand the sacrifices that you're going to have to make. And if those are really sacrifices for you or not. Like for me, one of the reasons why I sold my business was because I wanted to go to soccer games on the weekends. I wanted to be with the kids. I wanted to coach baseball. I wanted to, until I did. And then, oh man, coaching a bunch of kids, that's tough. that's harder than running any business, let me tell you. But I wanted to do all those things. So I was like, okay, I can't continue to run this business, even though, it's like a top 5 company as far as like entertainment companies in, my market. It's well known. It's got a huge client list. It's got a good contract list. It's going to run well for a long time. But is that what I want? And so and that was one of the nice things that I'm glad Sue talked a bit about on that show.
I mean, I remember Russ telling stories that when he was running his business, I mean, because it was entertainment and it was for events, he was gone most weekends. And, for his kids, that's when a lot of things happen, for kids. It happens on weekends, the games and what have you. So, it was a sacrifice that he had to give up a very successful business. Obviously, he sold it. So that was nice. He got a financial gain from it. But, it was done for the right reasons. And, going back to one of the first, keys to success was being true to yourself. That's what he wanted. And that was what was, part of the fabric that, what's going to make Russ happy. So, it all goes full circle, right? If you're true to yourself and you know what you want, you know what you need, then, you just got to follow that.
Absolutely. So, the music for your show and the logo artwork, how did you sort those out then?
Man, the music. That was listening to a ton of different
a lot of tracks.
I don't even know how many different songs we listened to in the beginning there. I remember actually sitting what was the my son was into that Disney show Phineas and Ferb. He was watching like a marathon of Phineas and Ferb, and I'm sitting on the couch with my AirPods in, listening to what felt like a marathon of different songs. I was just going through it. And I felt like, this is the identity of our show, right? So it was going to be tough. And I think, Greg, we settled on like 3 or 4 of those, and then we kind of picked from that. I can't remember exactly how that worked out, but I remember you listening to a bunch, I listened to a bunch, and then eventually we picked this one because it was kind of fun and upbeat and light but yet serious.
Yeah, I think we probably spent a month going back and forth on different music.
It was about a month, yeah.
It was about a month. So, I mean, it's not like we took this decision lightly. I hope people like the music. We listened to a lot of different tracks, and we would just throw them back and forth to each other until we narrowed it down to like the top 4, and then we finally made a decision. And then we do different music, pre-show, post-show, and then leading into our commercial breaks and stuff. So we were able to incorporate a couple of the different music pieces that we liked.
I think it really works. And if I might say, I think the actual logo itself is inspired. How you've got those words perfectly positioned so it looks like a light bulb. So it's like, it's like an idea, and it fits in with the whole business thing and then all the words are important words towards, businesses and trying to get better. And I think it's a great. It just works perfectly.
So I'll tell a little secret here. I found some clip art that worked really well, right?
Okay.
And then I was like, I like this idea. Let's change it up. Let's put our own words in there and let's make it kind of our own. So some art that I found on like Canva or something like that, where it was just close enough where I really liked it, but it wasn't the right word. So then we picked some words, threw it in there, and then we decided for each episode to change the main word. So the main word for us is ideas. Yeah. But for every episode, whether it be on success or leadership or whatever it is, we change the center of the light bulb so it goes to that particular topic, so that we're in a way, hey, we're lighting up that particular topic and talking about that in that episode.
That's very clever. That's great. So you must be using a podcast distributor then that allows you to change the logo each time.
Yeah. So we have episode artwork for each episode that we can upload. And a lot of podcast providers don't have that option. I know like Acast has that, which is where I host 2 of my podcasts. The other podcast is hosted on Megaphone. And we just moved it over there not too long ago. And we'll kind of get into why that was. And I'm assuming at some point in this interview, because we're going to tell you about our whole network thing that we're doing. But yeah, they allow for that little piece of artwork for each episode. And we're like, hey, if they're offering it, let's do this. Let's make it great. So we put a photo also of each one of our guests in there. And so far, all of our guests look amazing. That's helped us out. So, yeah, each episode has their own cover, and it looks, I think, really cool. And I know not all podcast players, have that even availability or that feature to show that. But I like doing it, and I'm assuming that Apple Podcasts and some other ones will catch up and start showing those the individual episode artwork at some point.
Absolutely. You might as well go into that networking then and what you were hinting at. Okay.
Well, yeah. So, Greg, I don't want to steal the thunder, because I think you came up with the name, right? Or how did we? I don't even know how we came up with the name, but
we came up with the name a lot easier than we came up with the music. But right. I'll actually start before we get to the name. I'll kind of talk about the steps that led us up to building up this network. Like most podcasters, you just want to put something out there that you're proud of. Yeah. And that's what we were doing with DIY for Business. And, we were just in our first season, and we got reached out to by a network called Electricast Media. Yeah. And Electricast, they heard our show. They really liked the content. They liked the rapport that Russ and I had. And they asked us whether we would like to join their network. And, we did our research on it, and they had a lot of progressive ideas on where they wanted to take podcasting. And the 2 owners of Electricast, they have amazing backgrounds in entertainment. One guy on the creative music side is writing, producing for people like Madonna, Elton John, and the list goes on. I think he's got over 20 number 1 hits. And then his partner is on the marketing media side, worked with DC Universe and Sony and Disney, and they started Electricast. And they really have a vision of where they kind of want their shows, their podcasts to, be able to expand, just be, beyond just being a podcast. So we did our research, and we really loved the concept of where they were taking this. So we joined Electricast, and we had our show hosted there. They moved us over to Megaphone, which is the platform that they use, and they started to get to know Russ and I and what we brought to the table. And yes,
yeah. Well, I was gonna say, Greg, like getting to know us was like 3 months, and that was one of the things that I really enjoyed about them, was they took that time to get to know us. I mean, it's such a compatible relationship with us and them, where it was just like, now, like we're much like the podcast, interviews, like we're at some point going to go get, I think we talked about margaritas with them. But it's like we had this just great relationship and rapport building over a 3-month period, where it was just, there's a lot of trust going both ways with us and them. And I just feel really, really good about going with them. So it took a lot for us to do that because the show is our baby, like we didn't want to put it in the wrong spot. We really feel like we landed in the right spot. Sorry, Greg, I wanted to just interject that.
No, I'm glad you did. I don't want people to think that we're alcoholics and all we think about is margaritas. So.
Oh yeah. There's that too. Yeah. Drink responsibly.
Yes, exactly. So through this relationship and bringing our show on, they listened to more of our episodes and so on. And then they came to us with this idea. They go, would you guys want to lead a business network under Electric Cast Media? And, Russ and I started talking about this and we are going, yeah, this could be really exciting. So now we have started what we're called Best Business Network. And it's going to be, a whole portfolio of different business-related podcasts that, we're going to lead. That's going to be kind of under Electric Cast Media, and we're really excited about. We've already in talks with, a number of shows that are in the process of moving their shows over to our platform and the network, and it's really exciting. It's funny because a couple of the shows are guests on our DIY show. They enjoyed it. They kind of saw how Russ and I are doing things, and they go, "Yeah, we'd like to. We're interested in learning more about what you guys are doing with the network." And through our discussions, they're thinking, or they're actually moving their shows over right now. And what the vision here is, and I want Russ to kind of add to the beginning of this, is we want to develop a community of podcasters that are all helping each other. And we touched upon this earlier. It's kind of, everybody wants to do this anyway, but let's facilitate it. And sometimes, you do kind of feel like you're on your own doing your own, indie podcast, but we're going to collaborate and help each other grow. And some shows are going to be really good on the music side or the interview side or the production side. Well, we're going to share all that knowledge within our Best Business Network so that it kind of elevates all of our shows.
Yeah. And that, is something that I don't know if a whole lot of places are going to, offer. And that was something that was really, core to what the beliefs are over at Electricast and what Greg and I believe as far as let's build a community. Let's all grow together. Let's lift all ships if we can, and where somebody is weak, well, there's probably somebody that's strong in the network. So let's facilitate that communication and that knowledge share so that hopefully all of us are producing better podcasts at the end of the day.
Hi, this is Katie at Bad Counsel with some good counsel. You should keep listening to Marv at Pods Like Us.
That's fantastic. I mean, yeah. So I think it's great that they've asked you guys to be in charge of that, and so are you going out there and you both are finding these shows yourselves, or are they being suggested to you?
We're finding them ourselves, and that's what's really been fun for me, is listening to all the different types of shows out there. I use the term business related because they're not all about, how to grow a business or whatever. I mean, business related could be so wide. And that's what I'm looking for, is I want to have a variety of different types of shows, all kind of business related, but not necessarily this is how you become a better salesperson, or this is how you grow a company, or what have you. We want to have a wide range of topics covered with our podcast. So I've been listening to a lot of different shows. Russ has been listening to a lot of different shows, and it's pretty fun because there's a lot of content out there. It's fascinating.
And there's not a great place right now that aggregates all that content either. There's no. I mean, okay, yeah, there's a few businessy type networks out there, but they're all the big players. There's a lot of undiscovered, really great talent that are hosting, podcasts that we've never heard of. That, we're like we're doing all these searches looking for these podcasts to try to discover great talent and bring them over to the network and share listeners as much as we can.
And the one thing I wanted to point out is that we're not looking for necessarily shows that have a huge listenership. And that's not really what's important to us. What's important to us right now is good content.
Yeah.
Like, if they have good content about their subject matter, that's what we're looking for.
Exactly.
So I'm guessing that Electrocast then have probably got other people looking for other types of shows for them, and they're just because I know Electrocast, they're not just about business shows; they're about all types of show.
Right. Yeah. So if you think of it kind of like different channels, right? Yeah. So, business would be one of the channels within the network, the overarching network of Electrocast Media. There's a female empowerment network that is yet to be named. I've heard some of the names, but there's that network. There's several other networks. And I'm not sure exactly which ones I can announce. I know I can announce that one because that one's already producing several podcasts, but there's a lot of different, I believe there's about 14 or 15 different networks or network channels, let's say, within Electrocast at this point.
But then I think that's, it's almost like, am I right in thinking it's almost like a pyramid type sort of thing then? So you've got these people there, and then it's like basic business where you've got these people there, and then they've got people that work beneath them that are in charge of this area, and this area, and it just trickles down sort of like that way.
Well, it's sort of kind of, I mean, it's more like I would compare it to, let's say you've got the different, like television networks. I changed my you're across the pond, so I don't want to, use, I guess I'll use ABC, NBC. But there's these different networks where like ABC or Disney owns essentially ABC. They've got ESPN for sports though. And they've got, whatever their financial channel is. And they've got all these different channels of specific programming. So if you think about it like that, where it's like, okay, so if I'm going to want something business related, I want to go to the Best Business Network. I want to just hear podcasts about business. And so, it's all individually produced content. And so the difference in this is like, so we're not going to be managing these podcasts. We're just bringing in these podcasts and we're all just kind of working together to help out each other. Right. Yeah. We can help them and we can log into their control panel, help them out, do these, various things. Right. But it's more of like, just, hey, we're here as somebody that is going to help to support you, just like they're going to help to support us on various things. The content that's on their podcast is completely up to them. Now, Electrocast, obviously, just for legal reasons, they want to say that, well, they can refuse to air a certain episode if something in there is not appropriate for the network or something. But essentially, all of their content is theirs, and they maintain that, they've got the copyright on that content. It's theirs. So what's cool about that is they get to do whatever they want on their show. We're not going to change their show. In fact, I mean, we'll put a logo in there. We'll spots, the commercials will start to, appear in there. But other than that, their podcast isn't really going to change much.
The other nice thing about being part of a network is we kind of, share guests. So,
right.
Some of us, have fantastic guests. All of us have fantastic guests that would be appropriate for some of the other shows. So we kind of have the opportunity to share guests, as well as it's a lot easier to monetize a network of shows than to monetize one show. Because for advertisers, it'd be nice if they could be on a female empowerment show, a business show, a sports show, all these different types of shows. If that's who the audience that they're trying to attract, it'd be very targeted marketing with podcasting. And being the lead on a business network, there's a lot of companies out there worldwide that specifically want this audience. and they have the opportunity of getting advertising on just one show, two shows, or the entire network, or cross network along under Electricast. So as far as monetizing the shows, there's more opportunity now as being part of a network.
Yep. So it's more of a cooperative as such.
Yeah, yeah. I would say something more like that, where we're all kind of, in some ways, I'm almost looking at it too as like, like an association, where, because we're all going to get to network together, which is great. We're all gonna, like I went to, a few like mixer type meetings, in throughout my business career. Well, not a few, plenty of those. And a lot of those are, I'm looking to rebuild my website. I just don't have anybody. Oh, well, you should talk to John over here. John's got a great website builder. And, and then all of a sudden you're talking to John and he's giving you the business card of the person that built his website. And now you know somebody that can build your website. I'm sort of looking at, hopefully, it becomes a lot of that as well, where we're doing these kind of network wide, virtual meetups where we're able to, network and share information like that, and including guests like Greg mentioned.
G'day. This is Matty C from the Astros Fantasy Football Podcast, way down in Australia. And we love getting to listen to Marv meet new podcasters from all over the world here on the Pods Like Us podcast.
So, with your, now you've got even more knowledge about podcasts than we thought. So, what advice would you give to people with making a podcast?
The first thing that comes to mind for me is stick with it.
Yeah.
That's the first bit. The second bit is make it for like, think about one particular person that you're going to make this podcast for and make it for them, but also make it for yourself. Don't think about, I only have 20 listeners and this is like not fun, like to do it just for 20 people. No, make it fun. Make it fun for that one listener and for yourself, and other listeners will follow, and your listenership will grow at some point, and it's like dominoes, like, it's like, okay, the first one to fall, is it going to make the next one fall? Yeah. That's how listenership goes, except the space between those dominoes are pretty wide. The first month, maybe you'll have 20 listeners. Maybe you'll have, if you're lucky, right? Maybe if you're lucky, your mom will listen. Who knows? But maybe not. After time goes through and you keep creating great content and you're doing it for the right reasons and you keep having fun doing it, listenership will grow. But don't make that the principal thing that you're doing it for.
You're making me think of Field of Dreams now. If you build it, they will come.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. I mean, that's the interesting thing about podcasting, because, businesses are using podcasting for marketing, right? Like we just talked about ads. Like, Home Depot's putting ads to grow awareness of Home Depot. They're putting those on our podcast. Wait, well, our podcast is actually like this big commercial for our show, right? So we're doing that bit of marketing. Now, of course, you've got to do other things, right? You got to do the social media. You got to do, whatever you can to get your message out there, to get more people to learn about your podcast. That's great and all. But first, make that primary focus on, building that field, not telling people about it. Build the field first, make it great. And then, they will come. By the way, I love that movie.
So do I.
Kevin Costner's best right there.
Oh yeah. Yep. Totally.
There you go. I'll have to bring you both in for a film chat one time, maybe.
Oh yeah, we're all about the film chat, television chat, food chat. Yeah, we're in.
Barbecuing, come on. I'm always grilling something.
Brilliant. So, what other shows do you both listen to? I'm looking forward to this list. Greg.
Oh, let's see.
Yeah, I kind of touched a little bit on this earlier that, I have a golf background. So not only golf, but I love sports. And I watch sports a lot on television, online. So I tend to gravitate towards sports related type podcasts. I do a lot of the fantasy leagues, whether it's baseball, football, basketball, fantasy golf, even. I do all that. So I tend to listen to those types of podcasts. Plus, I'm doing a lot of research on the business network. So I'm listening to a lot of business podcasts as well, too.
Okay. And Russ?
I really enjoy, like, one of my favorite podcasts that I listen to, like I that I don't want to miss ever, is Business Wars. I love that. It's a Wondery podcast. That is like fantastic. Like, I have to listen to that one whenever an episode comes out. I'm on it. And then I listen to Today Explained. It's a Vox podcast. That's big. And those are more, on the serious side, but on the funny side, actually, Science Versus as well is another big one for me. But on the fun side, Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend, I think, is one of the funniest podcasts out there. I love that one. And then, the friends that I've made in podcasting. I love the Listen to This. I listen to a podcast called Driving with Randy. That one, man, this guy just drives around in his car and records as he's driving around. Like, but it's so entertaining. Like, he's so much fun. And then, I feel like I'm listening to Friends when I listen to the Can't Win for Losing podcast. That's another one that's my, on my list of podcasts to listen to every week.
Yeah, I would also add that we listen to Simply Said with Polly Campbell. She's been one of our guests on our show a couple of times now, and she is part of the Best Business Network. She has a fantastic show. Again, it's Simply Said with Polly Campbell. If people get a chance to listen to her show, it's fantastic.
That's one of the few where I'm going through and I'm just like marathoning it. It's like I do, like with I'm binge listening to Polly. So I'm going through all of hers because she's so relatable, so fun, and her energy level is what gets me on that podcast. Like, I won't listen to Polly at night. Like, I won't do that. That's not one of my going to bed podcasts. I won't sleep. Yeah. She's like my wake up in the morning podcast.
Yeah, I kid with Polly. I say she's my wing person. If I ever need somebody to pump me up, she's that person.
What's interesting is neither one of us mentioned like any kind of like true crime podcast or anything like that. And it seems like everybody listens to a true crime, but we didn't mention one.
Although, Russ, you and I had a pretty cool idea to do a different spin on true crime if we ever decided to do it.
I know.
I don't want to. I don't want to reveal that idea because I think it's ingenious. But
yeah, we got to do that one.
lots of true crime.
Marv,
go on.
You listen to so you've had so many people on your show with different podcasts, and I know you probably don't want to offend anybody that's been on the show by not mentioning their podcast. So don't mention all 100 and whatever podcasts. But what are some of your favorites, like go to on a regular basis that you listen to, aside from DIY for Business?
As you've noticed, I've got a large variety of shows that I listen to. So, without wanting to offend certain people, favourites that I have would be I do like listening to Comic Book Nation all of the time. Although they used to be independent, but I believe that they are now part of the CBS network, I think, from what I've heard. But I do love listening to them. I love listening to a humorous show called Bad Counsel. I don't know if you've heard of that.
No, I haven't.
No, I haven't heard that either.
All right, writing that one down.
People call up or send in questions that could be seen as a bit risque, shall we say, and then they give sort of, it's all in the title, they give bad counsel in these things, shall we say.
Nice.
Yeah.
So people might have a problem with certain areas of their sex life or whatever, and then they give sort of like advice for things that they could do but probably shouldn't, should we say.
Might have to check that one out. That sounds entertaining. I might have to check that one out.
It's certainly not safe for work, that's for sure.
Okay.
I'll just put that out there.
The disclaimer.
Very big disclaimer, yes, and they do have a disclaimer at the beginning that tells you that as well. What else do I like? The Mind Buzz. That's a great show where Gil just talks to anybody and everybody, and he's got a fascination for anything whatsoever. I mean, I've had him on my show, and then I've guested on his show 3 times, surprisingly, and each time is different. Where I think we spoke about this. One of the subjects we spoke about was how England or the UK and America in the 60s and the 70s were influencing each other, and there's sort of like a back and forth in the entertainment world. So, you'd have like the Beach Boys inspiring the Beatles, and then the Beatles would then do something and inspire the Beatles back again. And then you had things like Stanley Kubrick. We went into that subject as well in the same program. And then the next program that I went on there with him, I introduced him to something that he'd not heard of before, which was some experiments done in the 50s and the 60s, which were psychology experiments at Yale, and he didn't know about it, and he was fascinated. So that's an interesting one. He'll pick any subject whatsoever.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's a fun one. Yeah.
Hey there, this is Bobby with the Rock Guys podcast, and you are listening to Marv Smooth on the Pods Like Us podcast. Check him out.
You know what I love about podcasting is even like you mentioned Stanley Kubrick.
Yep.
There's an entire podcast that's just about him and his films.
There is.
Like, what? There's so much great content out there. Like, I picked some of the big ones, right? Like, I literally, when I looked at my list there, I just grabbed the latest, the most recent podcast that I've listened to over the last week. And it's so diverse and, like you said, eclectic mix of just my listening is all over the place. And it's like, that's what's great about podcasts is there's a podcast out there for everything and everyone, but yet there's still room for more podcasts. I love that.
Yeah. I just found a podcast earlier today that is all about Elvis Costello music.
Yes.
And I love Elvis Costello. I grew up on Elvis Costello music. So when I found this podcast, I go, oh my goodness, I can't believe this. This is perfect. So I would never expect that.
Is that Dangerous Animals or something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that. Yep. Myself and yourself have discovered that at the same time.
Really?
Because
Funny.
I've just discovered that this past weekend, that podcast. And when I discovered that, I've just added it to my list and started listening to it the other night.
Are you an Elvis Costello fan as well?
Yes, very much. I love Elvis Costello, and I think his work with Paul McCartney was great as well.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah, it's amazing stuff. Now, I for the people that are listening to this podcast, they can't see it right now, but you're wearing a Marvel shirt. And you mentioned comics. Do you also like the movie side of the superhero universe?
I do, very much. Yep. And I have got a large collection of comics, I will say.
Because there's some amazing podcasts out there about the whole superhero universe, some on movies, some on the comic side that you mentioned earlier. So my daughter and I bond over that. And so we both listen to different podcasts about that genre.
That's another good thing as well, because you can find shows that you can share with other people and listen with other people as well.
Yeah.
That same daughter, she turned me on to a Disney podcast about these two guys that basically tour around to the Disney theme parks and give you all of the little cheats on how to, get through the lines quicker or where to watch the different parades and stuff. That's a great show too.
Nice. It's funny how many Disney podcasts and YouTube channels there are. And I find myself, there's this guy, Justin Scard, that's a YouTuber. I watch every darn video that he produces. It's so cool though, because he goes to Disney parks and he talks about it, and then you get to know him as you're going through it and all this stuff. I mean, at the end of it, after watching a bunch of videos, you feel like these people are like, if friends of yours, because they're just that, and that's like with podcast and with certain like YouTube channels, like it creates that relationship because you're talking to a single person. It's very intimate in a way.
And I think that goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Like the good ones have a way of connecting with their audience.
Yeah.
So you do feel like they're your friends. It's amazing how that happens. And, the nice thing about podcasts is like it's, you're your podcast, Russ, is daily, or the DIY show is weekly. People get used to like hearing your voice on an ongoing basis and getting to know you more and more over time. And that relationship just keeps building. It's kind of fun. It is.
Yeah. It definitely. Well, and like there's, speaking of Disney, there was one podcast. I actually interviewed this guy, and he's an HR lawyer, which we gotta get him on the show, Greg. But he actually hosts a podcast. It's called a Disney Channel Original Newbies. And it's him and his wife, and they realized that his wife had never seen a Disney Channel original movie. So what they did was they started from the beginning, whatever the first Disney Channel original movie was, and they watch every single one of them in the order that they came out. Wow. And they talk about it. It's like, it's such a weird idea, but they do it really well. And it's pretty fun to listen to. Even if you've never watched a Disney Channel original movie, it's so funny to watch because or to listen to, because they've gone back all the way to 1990s. And they're watching all of them, and it's like making fun of the fashion and all these different things. It's pretty funny.
I'm going to have to look now and see if there's one where they go through all the films on the Hallmark channel.
Oh, exactly right, or Lifetime, or one of those. All those like Shannon Doherty, Alan Thicke movies or whatever on Lifetime back in the early 2000s. Oh yeah. That would be a fun one. If you don't find one, Marv, let's get that together.
Absolutely. You've reminded me actually of another one where there's a show that's called is it called Comic Book Couples Counseling? And this is funnily enough a husband and wife who present it, and the whole idea of the show is it's about relationships and couples in comic books over the years. So you'll have you have the famous ones would be the Jean Grey and Cyclops, yes, and also Wolverine as well in the comics for the X-Men. But they're all about those couples that are in the comics, and it's all about how their relationships have been over the years, and that's a really interesting different subject.
Yeah, there's always a different angle that you can look at these different stories, right? It's so fun and creative how people come up with these different angles. It's really refreshing, and it makes you go back and actually look at, like in your case, the X-Men. It makes you go back and look at those movies and look at it a different way after you've listened to the show about the relationships. So I find it really fun. Like some of the show you did on the classic movies, yeah, like you learn stuff about these movies that you never heard of before through a podcast. Then you go back and watch the movie, and like the Elvis Costello one, like you learn some of the what was the idea behind different songs and stuff, and it's just really fascinating. I love that part of it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to listening to that Elvis Costello one a lot more, because they've got some people that have been who worked behind the scenes on the music with Elvis as well.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I can't wait. I just, like I said, I just found it today. I listened to one episode, so I'm going to kind of dig in probably over the weekend.
That's great. That's cool. So where can people find you and get hold of you?
Well, we've got Greg is done such a great job on our Twitter presence. So Twitter is a fantastic way to reach out to us. Got the LinkedIn, and then we've got the website, which is DIYforbusinesspodcast.com.
And basically all the usual platforms for podcasts. You can find us on all of them. DIY for Business.
Wow. So you've got the same username for all of the Facebook, the Twitter, and the Instagram.
Yes. Yep. Look up DIY for Business podcast. You'll be able to find us.
That's great. Anyway, thank you guys for speaking to me today.
Thanks for having us, Marv. It was a lot of fun.
It really was. Thank you very much. And thank you, everybody, for listening. If you want to contact me, you can through podslikeus@gmail.com. And the same again as these guys. If you just look up Pods Like Us on the social networks, then you'll be able to find us. Anyway, thank you for listening, and hope you listen again to another episode of Pods Like Us.
Hello.
Hi, Marv.
Hello, Russ.
Hello. How are you?
And hello, Greg.
Well, hello.
Why can't I hear you guys?
Greg, so
I can hear Russ and Marv.
What's going on with my thing?
Yeah, I can hear everybody. Greg, we could just do our show.
Welcome to DIY for Business.
I'm excited about today's show.
I shouldn't be doing that. Still can't hear anything. Oh, heard something there.
Did you hear this?
Yes, I can. I can now.
I love it.
All right.
Get to see the faces behind the voices.
Exactly.
That's always fun.
Do the faces match?
The faces look better than the voices.
Oh, hey. Well, I don't know. Is that a compliment?
Now I know I'm on the right show.
Yeah, exactly. It's better than saying that we have a face for podcasting.
You have a face for the television. Is it just a voice? Is it just an audio podcast, or is it available visually as well? I've not looked. Oh dear, this isn't going to work with video. Let's go to sound only. Sorry, guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's causing problems for my internet.
We're just winding down.
It is. It's not behaving. Okay. So let's see how we go. So it's Greg Louie and Russ. Is it Katanak?
Wow. Yeah.
Is it? Wow.
Well, it's Catnack, but you're so darn close that I rarely get that. So good job.
So do you want the full names, or do you want me to just introduce you as your first names?
No, just first names is fine for me. Greg?
Yeah. Greg's fine.
Yeah.
Greg and Russ. Yeah. Makes you more, well, I mean, how can you get any more attractive for the listener anyway? Don't push it, Marv. Don't push it. Okay, since it's so late, I'd normally have a good long chat beforehand, but I think we'll get into this show because my neighbours might be irritated too much otherwise. As it's 10 past midnight here. Okay, let's see how we go. Okay. And this time I am very happy to say that I am joined by Greg and Louis. No, Greg. Martin. That's an outtake. And thank you very much, guys. How was that?
Great.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
A lot of fun.
Hopefully we can do it again down the road, and we can give you little updates on what's been going on with the network.
That'd be a great idea. I've sent a message to Electricast as well while we've been chatting and asked for them to send me wherever they want me to put links for themselves as well in the show notes.
Oh, great! Thanks for doing that.
That's cool. And I know to get you both on for any future stuff, Greg for film and possibly Russ for film, and any music related thing or anything basically. Disney for Greg, I'm guessing.
I'll have to bring my daughter in for that one. Yeah, because
I can take the Disney possibly. Definitely. I have a smoker in the backyard, and I was hoping we'd be done by about 6 because I have to go outside or actually I have to start my turkey for tomorrow. We have Thanksgiving tomorrow, so we're having a turkey that's got to be done by noon. Ooh. So I have to put it in tonight in the smoker and cook it overnight. So anything on smoking, cooking, I'm your guy. I'll come in.
Yep. Next time we talk about barbecues, you're in there.
I love it.
Do you have an idea? Do you have an idea, Marv, of when this show will air?
You'll be surprised to hear this one is coming out on Sunday.
Oh my goodness, that's quick.
It's very quick. We've just moved house, so the last episodes I made were back in October or the beginning of October. So I had a huge cache of episodes, and this past Sunday I put out the last one that I'd got recorded. So now I'm trying to catch up again and trying to get episodes done.
Oh, we look forward to hearing it. Will you all pump it up on our social media as well?
Okay, thank you very much, guys. I'll let you get on with smoking that turkey.
Thank you very much, Marv.
Thanks for having us on.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
Bye-bye.